Okay, I think we should start and kick this off. First question already, Rob, thank you for using the Q&A. I was going to say we have a Q&A open or the chat. Please direct any of your questions in there, and we will pause and talk about them. There will be time for questions after, or if you want to come in and just ask a question during the presentation, you can go for that. So we will do both of those. And I want to thank everybody for getting on, and we will let Wayne take it off.
Hello. Thanks to all of you for signing on today and listening to the presentation on our Verasys product line. If there are questions, obviously put them in the chat. One of the moderators will stop me if necessary, and we can answer those questions. Also, I have about a 30-minute buffer between this meeting and my next meeting. So if people have specific questions or maybe questions that would be too long to answer during this presentation, I can certainly stick around after this, and we can talk in depth on individual topics or questions that folks may have. So I'm Wayne Crisci. I am the senior application engineer for the new Omni channel within Johnson Controls. So Omni is a support channel for pre-sale, and in some cases, like in my instance, post-sale support for products. In addition to the Verasys line, I'm also responsible for our valves, dampers, actuators, variable frequency drives, and airflow monitoring stations. So, questions on those at a later date would certainly be welcome as we move forward. So let's take a look at the Verasys options that we have. And in particular, let's start with the way that we connect to these sites. So we've got two different connection methods. We can use a local interface, and that can be done either through an IP connection if a customer wants a wired connection, or if they're within range of the Verasys hub, they can do a Wi-Fi connection to the hub itself. The hub will not communicate wirelessly or through Wi-Fi back to a building IP system. That's simply not the way that the system is designed. It's too hard to secure in those types of environments. And we also have a Verasys Enterprise, which was released about 3 years ago. Enterprise is aimed primarily at customers that are going to be doing multi-site applications. Because Verasys is without Enterprise is basically a single site operation. So if you have 6 buildings and you want to change the schedule in 6 buildings, you would have to make 6 individual connections for scheduling. Enterprise allows you to schedule 60, 600, 6,000 sites all through a single dashboard interface. So it saves a tremendous amount of time and also makes it very easy on the IT department to do the integration to this type of system. If we look at who did we point this product at, okay? We were looking at a way for us to not only provide a lower cost, light commercial control system, but also to provide controls to help our partners over in the ducted system side sell rooftop units. And you'll see throughout the presentation, I'll mention that the Verasys system is factory installed as a standard in all of our rooftop equipment. I want to say 5 through I think 90 ton, and someone on the equipment side can correct me if those numbers have changed at any point in the past. But we're aiming this system at for example, on the left side there, office buildings, 10 to 100,000 square foot. I will say this, that right around the 50,000 square foot mark, Verasys starts to become less attractive to those customers. And it's primarily because buildings of that size are going to have a central plant. We don't have a central plant controller, a true central plant controller out today. We're looking at something probably in 2025 to handle that. We have individual controllers for boilers and chillers, but we don't have a holistic approach to the central plant at this time. Also, Verasys does not feature custom reporting. So if you want to do custom reports for folks, it's simply not a function of this type of system, as well as complex graphics. So graphics in Verasys are going to be static graphics. They're not moving pictures. They're not boxes that you can click on. And we did this because the audience that we're targeting with the Verasys product line are going to be folks that simply don't have the depth in their organization to support that kind of thing. They don't have people sitting in a room staring at computer screens all day long. They want, if something goes wrong or if they need to be notified about conditions at a site, They want to be able to get a text or an email message sent to them. And then that message can be tailored in any form or fashion. We can also send it to multiple people. We can also grade alarms by severity. So we may not want the president of the company to know that it's time to change filters, but he may be interested in knowing that there's some sort of other failure within the system. We can also send messaging to preferred contractors and also facility managers so that those guys can kind of sync up. We can get a truck rolling as fast as possible and hopefully fix any problem before the customer even notices. The other side of the page there are the retail sides that we've really looked at in targeting this product. So any retail space. So it could be a new construction on a shopping center, for example, or it could be a repurposed or revamped shopping center where we have a real estate management team that's responsible for taking care of HVAC, also minimizing utility spend and maximizing efficiency of the equipment. So we have that as well. A dock in a box is basically just an office building, but it's full of doctors. And so it's handled pretty much the same way we would any other office building. I included K-12 in this application, not necessarily because, or I should say, necessarily in the more rural areas of the country. And that has to do primarily with, again, we're seeing larger school systems and larger school buildings employ central plants. But if you're in the typical, what we see here in the South, which is a school with like a BARD or a train unit, wall mounted, Verasys is a fantastic product for them to use. Big box stores, we have teams of folks out there going after the Walmarts and the Best Buys and the Walgreens stores. But I'm looking specifically at how do we repurpose these buildings? Everyone knows where there's a closed Walmart store and it sits empty. And when it's time to repurpose that, Verasys is uniquely positioned to not only be able to provide control of new equipment, but also we have a line of retrofit equipment that can work on practically any other competing customer or competing vendors' products. So we don't have to strand assets on the roof. We don't have to rely on the existing control system that may work, may not work. Maybe it was ripped out by the previous owners. Maybe they don't care to share password information with us. We have a system that can drop on and it can integrate new and existing equipment as well. Restaurants were kind of a surprise to us in that we knew that they were very utility cost conscious, but they looked at that combined with the ease of scheduling and other such features that Verasys has in order to make a very, very attractive system for those owners. Warehouses are a slam dunk. You've got 20, 30, 40 more rooftop units all stretched out in a line. We will talk about some of the Verasys wireless communications a little later on in the presentation, and you'll see how that works very, very well with that type of an application. And then one that didn't make a picture here, but it is still very significant, is automobile dealerships. We released Verasys 2.0 probably about 3 years ago, and that allowed us to now be able to monitor and control all the specialty gases that are in place in a car dealership, like hydrogen, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide. All those can now be measured, controlled, and alarmed should they get out of range through any Verasys system that was released 2.0 or later. So if we look at a complete system for managing a facility, we're uniquely placed in that world because not only can we pull in HVAC, we can also add in lighting. We can do irrigation control. We can do energy meter monitoring. We can do energy management both on-prem and through an auto DR type of application as well. And the remote connectivity that we have, allowing folks that are both in the plant to communicate wirelessly or wired with the system, also makes troubleshooting and setting up any of these types of systems much, much easier than they would have been with a competitor's system. So what is Verasys? Okay, let's take a look at it. It is a light commercial control system. Okay, this is not a replacement for Metasys or FX. Okay, this is a system that's targeted to slot in below those products. Think any application that you would be doing with a programmable thermostat, a network probably programmable thermostat, you can now do with Verasys at very close to the same price point, but also provide the customer with way more features than a networked programmable thermostat could even hope to offer. Configurable parameters. We have made this system as simple as we possibly can so that we can shorten the training time for our installing contractors. It takes us probably a year or more to get one of our techs up to speed on our higher elevated control systems. We're looking at Verasys taking maybe a couple of hours of training in order to get the system installed, and then even less than that to do owner training so that they can take over the system and run it themselves. It allows mechanical contractors to bundle controls. So now we're looking at a single source for both HVAC control and any of the other ancillary systems that we talked about earlier. It's the one throat to choke philosophy that we're using here, meaning we don't want to have a situation where the controls guy is pointing at the equipment guy and the equipment guy is pointing at the controls guy, and the customer's still unhappy and nothing's getting done. So we've included that functionality in it. We have an intuitive interface. If anyone has worked with our map gateway tools, any of you installers out there, you'll easily recognize Verasys. We've integrated the map gateway into the Verasys hub so that you have a wireless way to communicate with the system during construction, installation, test and balance, commissioning, or any of those types of features. If you happen to be out of range of the hub, we've also made it very easy for the hub to be moved to whatever portion of the building that you're working in. So if you're on the fourth floor and you can no longer communicate with the hub via Wi-Fi, go get the hub, bring it upstairs, plug it into any Verasys controller, and now you've moved that connectivity and functionality to a local area. Of course, when you're done, we would certainly like it if you returned that product back to its original location. Being able to remotely commission, monitor, test equipment, and I'll add into that support. So, if you need help in the construction side, if you can't find a parameter, if you're struggling with getting a system balanced or finding the control methods that you need, we certainly have a team of folks out there that are going to be able, that are dedicated Verasys folks that are able to help you. And it certainly is very, very helpful and highly recommended that at least through the point of turning the system over to the owner and doing owner training, that you maintain an external connection to the building. That external connection can be through a customer's IP system, or it could be through an optional cellular modem that is factory configured and shipped with the hub itself. We have to have a connection to the outside world, either through an IT connection or through a cell modem in order to do remote alarm notifications. So the system itself actually sends emails. You can configure an email with the cell phone number in order to make an email look like a text message when it's received by the recipient. So, but again, that all will require that we have some sort of connection to the outside world. And I've talked about it earlier, but I'll emphasize it again, is that we can pick up other third-party equipment. So anything that has a conventional thermostat interface, a CTI, that is extremely important when we're looking at this, particularly if we're doing zoned systems. We have to have that RGYW terminal for us to control a third-party piece of equipment. The other optional control method or connection method would be using BACnet for a BACnet-enabled piece of equipment, but we have to make sure that that is not used in a VAV or changeover bypass application. For those applications, if we have a rooftop unit or an air handler, it must have a conventional thermostat interface, or we're going to be looking at embedding controls in these equipment. And that's not going to be a very easy proposition for all but the most experienced installers of building automation systems. So what is it not? It is not a fully programmable BAS system, and it's that way by design. If it were fully programmable, we wouldn't be talking about having a couple hour training in order to get folks up to speed. We would be back to that 1 hour or 1 year spool up for knowledge. And so what we're doing is we're taking our higher level controls and we're shipping them pre-programmed with applications specific to the needs of that particular customer or that particular project. So if you want to do a VAV system, we have controls that are specific for VAV. If you're doing changeover bypass, we have controllers specific for that. Constant volume, we have that as well. So there is a lot of flexibility there, but again, it's not fully programmable. I feel that there are enough parameters within the Verasys system that we should never need to get into the code of this system. You ought to be able to set this up and configure it through the parameters that are currently presented through the main Verasys interface. Again, it's not an equivalent for replacement for Facility Explorer or Metasys. We have not designed it for that. We don't want to displace them. Again, we're slotting in underneath those. We're going after the programmable thermostat, network thermostat applications that we're seeing a lot of today in the small to medium sized commercial applications. No dynamic graphics, okay, but you can be very, very creative with static images. So what I'm saying is you're not going to be able to look at a floor plan and see the rooms change colors from green to red to yellow or whatever colors they have, or click on a room and go to a specific controller for that room itself. But if you're creative with static pictures, you can certainly give Verasys the look and feel of much larger systems. And again, we're not targeting the folks that are doing, the remote operation centers that are taking care of themselves. We're looking for the light commercial applications where owners may or may not even have a footprint in the building itself. So, and let's see, that's the family. That was a double slide. Sorry about that. Why is it not changing? There we go. Okay, so bundle controls and equipment. This is an important part of what we're doing here today. We want to be able to provide that one source for controls, one source for ventilation, one source for lighting, all from one folks, and we're hoping that that's going to be Johnson Controls. Our controllers for Verasys are in factory installed in our 5 through 90 ton rooftop units, and I think it's 7.5 through 20-ton split systems have the Verasys controllers already factory installed. One of the features that we've added is the ability to update the firmware in rooftop units without having to physically go to the unit. Previously, before the latest release of Verasys, if we needed to reprogram or update the firmware in a rooftop unit, we had to actually go to that unit with a USB stick. Now we have the option of doing it remotely, which is a huge time and labor savings component of this system. We also have the ability to reset alarms, reset timers. We place the unit, override the unit for certain operating conditions, whether it be test and balance, commissioning, or just simple use of the system during construction. We have that feature. There's also the circle of comfort, which I think I have a video of that later on in the presentation, is a way for the owner or the operators of the system to get a very quick snapshot of everything that they really need to know about that system without having to bore down into the programming or looking at status screens, trying to decipher what they have. So it's unique to us, the circle of comfort, and it is a very user-friendly and intuitive means to connect. We also now have a commissioning mode that's dedicated to Verasys. So it's a one-click commissioning. It will require that all the rest of the equipment connected to that system, rooftop unit, VAV boxes, changeover bypass, damper controllers, bypass controllers, whatever it is, all of them have to be fully programmed and functional. But we've combined both test and balance and calibration of zone controllers and rooftop units into one exercise, which dramatically reduces time spent in commissioning and balancing these systems. We also are offering wireless connectivity, which you'll see a little later in the presentation, and that would be wireless between temperature sensor and controller, and between controller and controller, and then controller and rooftop unit, and then all of that back to the hub. We'll give you a bit of insight. Wireless is not less expensive than a wired system. And so we can go into why that is a little later on, or maybe after the presentation if folks are need a little clarification on that as well. So if we look at the system architecture, we have a couple of different types of systems here. First is going to be what we call a single zone or constant volume application. Moving from left to right, everything starts with the building hub. For third-party equipment, okay, so Carrier Train, Lennox, A and Daikin, those types of things, they would, if there's a conventional thermostat available to us, we would use the TEC line of thermostats for up to 2 stages of heat and 2 stages of cooling. If we go above 2 and 2, we would then use one of our VAC application controllers that you see on the far right of that screen. And it can handle, I want to say, like 5 cool and 4 heat stages. It also will give us the opportunity to do, for example, combinations of DX cooling and hot water heating, or chill water cooling and chill water cooling and hot water heat. We have all those applications that are then easily selectable and configurable with the product itself. Also, if a device in a constant volume application, so hear me on this, a constant volume or single zone application, we can do a direct backnet integration to anyone's backnet enabled rooftop equipment. So we also have, some very simple controls for exhaust fans, boilers, things like that. But we're just basically enabling those products, meaning we can't start a boiler or a chiller with a request for cooler heat. We can start that equipment based on an outside air temperature and or a scheduled start and stop time. So rudimentary at this point, but again, we were looking forward to next year seeing our offerings in central plant controls. Now, if we jump down to the multi-zone application, and this is what we're seeing a good portion of what Verasys does today. So we're talking here VAV or changeover bypass. So again, starting from left to right, everything begins with the hub. But now you see as we go down this vertical bus, okay, called the system bus, I'm sorry, the zone bus, we've added a new controller called the zone coordinator. And if you're familiar with our other upper end lines of controls, you have not seen zone coordinators previously. The zone coordinator handles the communication between the rooftop unit and the VAV boxes. It's also where the schedule resides, and it's also where some of our trend sampling it lives as well. It's used to recognize, for example, requests for conditioned air after hours or on weekends, so you can override the system if an individual comes in and needs conditioned air after hours. We also have not only for a VAV system, but also changeover bypass. And the nice thing about the way we've set up Verasys is that it's the same zone coordinator, and in some cases, even the same rooftop unit can be used for both of those applications. And then the only difference being the boxes that we hang below it. Up to 32 zones per zone coordinator. And we're saying maybe up to as many as 5 zone coordinators per hub, and we're listing that as with making air quotes with our fingers, because we really have to respect the total point count, which is around 20,000 points that are going to be in the Verasys hub. I seriously doubt most or almost all light commercial systems will come even close to meeting that requirement. We can mix and match. So let's say we've got some of our equipment. Let's say we've got some third-party stuff. We can use a TEC or an application controller, or we can do a direct connection to Johnson Controls SEC equipped package equipment. Wireless. We had from the beginning temperature, humidity sensing via wireless sensors. Connected back to a controller, but we've now added in the wireless communications using the TCMs and TCRs, I believe, are the two devices that we use for these. It's basically the same device for us. The device is configured to be either a repeater or a communications device going forward. TECs, unfortunately, we can't, as of today, access the wireless TEC. We would have to use a wired one with a separate wireless communications device, as you see down there on the bottom. But wireless is probably going to be a subject for a future session with this. I could probably do an hour just simply talking about wireless products themselves. So if you have questions about wireless integrations, please feel free to reach out at the end. Reach out to any of your Johnson Controls partners here so that you can get additional information on how to integrate wireless into your building automation system. So a number of different ways that we can connect. Okay, so we have a hardware install only. So this is going to be, you have a hub. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see that black dongle that's sticking out. It almost looks like a USB drive. That's actually a Wi-Fi transceiver. So that would be what we would use during commissioning, startup, installation. It keeps us off the customer's network. Okay, remember, the majority of the buildings we're working in, the customer doesn't have a presence. So he doesn't even have a network in this building per se. In situations where the customer does, we can use wireless so we can stay off of their network. And then when we're done and we're ready to hand it over to the owner, the IT department may be a little nervous about having a Wi-Fi enabled device on the network. So we simply unplug that transceiver, leave it in the bottom of the enclosure. We will need it from time to time, particularly if somebody gets into the hub and makes some changes that are detrimental to the hub operation. We would need to make a wireless connection in order to correct that as well. Connecting to the internet. So we can connect this system to a customer's IT network. And then with the proper credentials provided by the IT department, anyone in the building on the customer side of the or on the customer side of the firewall could have access to this system. Again, it's password protected, very robust type of system that we're using. So we would have to have, credentials issued to anyone that needs to connect to the system. And then if the IT department wants to open this up to connections from outside of their network, meaning either a VPN connection, dedicated address for the control system, that's really up to them. They can provide all of that information or all that features and functionalities to whoever they feel necessary is necessary to connect to the system. And then enterprise, which is a way for us to link multiple sites together. The nice part of enterprise is it really makes the IT department's life very easy because this is an outbound connection only, just like it would be if you had a PC on a network in your office today. All notifications are pushed out to a server, so it leaves us with a very, very highly secure system, but still the ability to get information out of the system and make rudimentary changes. Enterprise will not allow you to make all of the changes necessary to a system, meaning we can't program, I should say, or configure through this system, but we can do scheduling, we can look at trend, we can look at meter data, we can do building our enterprise-wide set point changes for both temperature, humidity, CO2, and energy usage also. So very, very robust and very, very flexible system that's going to provide customers with a certain ease of operation that I don't think anyone in the industry is used to seeing today. So let's take a look at Verasys 5.0 that dropped. I think it was Q3 of last year, Q2 of last year. We do have a new Verasys hub that came out. The hub has, again, is our connection point. It's also the where all of our schedules live in the system. It's our interface or our throughput for connected to the system. And it comes with some options. So we can buy a standalone hub if we feel that that's the most cost effective way to handle the project. We can also provide hubs in an enclosure with a power supply. And then we can also add to that other controllers like application controllers, modems, all those types of things can be integrated into that same cabinet. And we have part numbers in our system to reflect all of those different options. So that makes pricing and ordering the system very, very simple as we go forward. So we've got here the different methods to connect. So we've got connected Verasys. There's our cell modem there on the left, connected to our hub. Gets remote connectivity, gets us into buildings where we don't have network available to us. And so basically we can have outlying buildings or buildings without a presence. I can still remain connected to the system. Folks that manage the building can still have the ability to move into or to examine those systems remotely. And also be able to receive alarms and notifications. We have a service contractor interface that's available to us. That's going to help us do things like generate work orders, resolve alarms, provide some diagnostic information for contractors that are signed up for the system. This is an option, but this option doesn't necessarily include Johnson Controls. Okay, we don't want to force ourselves into your business. If you have preferred contractors that are maintaining these systems, we want them integrated into this and only reaching out to us if there's a problem that can't be easily resolved in the field. And then enterprise, we've talked about that before. All the different ways to connect to these different types of systems. If you have any of these types of rooftop equipment, these are all the different brands of Johnson Controls, then we have the ability to connect to those systems. They're going to ship factory enabled with Verasys on board. We also have an option now to have a wireless network installed at the factory. Again, if you're doing a distribution center, for example, where you've got 20, 30, 40 rooftop units, this is a fantastic option to have. And man, is it a time saver. But it will require someone that has knowledge of wireless networking because there are some addressing and some template work that has to be done with each of those sensors. But the majority of the configuration, with the exception of addressing and subnet information, will be programmed in the device prior to shipping, which is a huge time savings in the field. And then again, being able to have these devices connected are certainly going to change the way we interact with these systems. If you combine this with our FDD, fault detection and diagnostic option, we can actually troubleshoot units remotely. Imagine a service guy drives up to the building, pulls out his tablet, connects wirelessly to the Verasys hub. If it has FDD installed, then he's able to see everything that he would see if he brought all of his gauges and all of his test equipment to the roof. And he can see that not only in his van in the parking lot, but if we have a remote connectivity, they can see it in their offices as well. So a huge way. If you're doing PSAs, or you have a customer that is really determined to protect their asset, then wireless and FDD is certainly a necessary evil in these types of applications. So Airwall product, we've added when we bought Tempered Networks. We put in their Airwall security stuff. So we've also have third-party authentication now via text message, so that we know who's connecting to these networks, and we verify that they are who they say they are. And then and this helps to secure these networks, give our customers peace of mind, and then maintain the reliability of the systems from end to end. If you need additional training information, so on verasyscontrols.com, this is probably the most important slide in this presentation. But verasyscontrols.com is where we are now storing all of our equipment drawings, all of our documentations, from product bulletins to installation guides to catalog cut sheets, training on how to do all of these things. So if you're, we understand that if you train technicians on how to use the product, unless the next morning they go to the site and start using it, it's a diminishing skill. And 2 or 3 months from now, they may not have all the knowledge that they had when they left training. So we have the ability through verasyscontrols.com or YouTube, go to YouTube, type in Verasys. You'll be able to watch videos that are dedicated to the piece of equipment that you're working on. So if you don't remember how to set up a zone coordinator, start up the video. Watch the video on your phone, pause it. When you need to make a change, make the change, resume the video. By the time you're done watching that 5 or 10 minute video, you have a piece of equipment that's completely set up for you. So we've done a lot of work in revamping verasyscontrols.com. It was down for a while with the original content removed, and now we've gone back with all new content. And I'm very proud to say that it is really a super process that we've got going with that, and probably your best friend if you're selling or servicing Verasys. So that's the end of the presentation. A little bit shorter, but I wanted to leave enough time for folks to ask questions. So is there anything out there that I can answer for you?
You guys can drop in either the question and answer or in the chat, whatever works for you guys.
Wow, either I did really good or really bad.
It's a lot of info.
It's a lot of info in a short period of time.
Yeah.
But if, like I said, I'll stick around. If I know sometimes people may not be comfortable asking questions in front of a group, or maybe you need me to back up a little bit and go into more of the basics. This training is available through Brooks and the others on this call. If you need more in-depth training on Verasys, like how to sell it, how to install it, how to configure it, or anything with our tier 4 products, valves, dampers, actuators, drives, flow stations, you can you can ask those folks to set something up. This is what I do. I'm an application engineer, but my primary focus is doing training for folks, and certainly would look forward to the opportunity to meeting with you again to discuss in depth anything you've seen today, or pick up some new topics and take them to ground as well.
Looks like, Wayne, we have a question.
Yay!
Is support still working on fixing this platform? Our last update was over 6 months ago, and that update had several bugs that to this day have not been addressed. Communication failures, zone coordinators reverting to factory defaults, and loss of connection to the schedules.
Yeah, those have been addressed in the newest version. Now, some things, we're still working through, but the majority of those have been addressed in not only in the latest release, but also in some mid-year releases that we had last year.
When was the latest release? How many months ago was that, Wayne?
Gosh, I want to say November. That would be my best guess.
Okay.
Certainly, it was towards the end of last year. It was fairly recent when 5.0 dropped.
Okay. And with 5.0, that should have fixed most of those bugs.
Yes.
Um, we have someone who was curious about the patch for the platform, but also curious about VAV changeover, not the bypass.
So, what's the specific question?
Doug, I'm
Do
gonna
we
leave it to
do, do we
you.
do VAV and changeover bypass systems? Yes, we do.
Okay.
Have they made any progress on firmware over the air on VAVs or any other products outside of the rooftops and the hub?
Well, the only piece that's left now is the current zone coordinator, because rooftop units can be updated over the wire or over the air.
Yep.
I don't think that they're going to be doing much with doing anything improved on the current zone coordinator, because we're going to be releasing a new one. I'm hoping before the end of this year. The one that we currently use is pretty much maxed out as to what its capabilities are.
Gotcha.
And we're also going to bring in features that will allow us to do a backnet integration to a third-party controller below the zone coordinator, because that's been a popular request as well.
In the cellular, it looked like you were talking about the cellular smart building hub that includes cellular interface. Is that
Correct.
How soon is that available, or when will that be available?
It's available now.
Okay. And is it a different product number?
Yeah, there's a different part number for the
Okay.
I think it's a CM at the end of the, instead of being a -0, it's a -CM.
I mean, right now, since the last time we saw you, Wayne, we've been very successful on turning all of our sites, with the exception of some banks, into remote access. So I'd say we probably have 20 plus sites that are
Awesome.
fully connected. And then we probably have another, 15 or so that we're working through trying to get them connected. So,
Good.
and cellular with the banks, I think, is probably the only way. They're
Yeah,
just
and
very
staying.
reluctant.
Yeah, they won't let you on their network. That's
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
But yes, just keep in touch with the Verasys support team. I'm available, but I travel relentlessly, so I can't always take calls. But we're working through not the upgrades for the equipment that we have in place, and I'm hoping that we'll see a new zone coordinator very soon.
I have some sites right now where we are using some other brands for changeover applications. And I just wanted to 100% clarify that using BACnet and zone coordinators with third party is not available today.
Correct. Not until the new zone coordinator comes out.
Okay. Do you have a estimated time frame on that?
I want to say it's going to be next year, but I know that I've seen the internal documentation floating around about configuration and form and function and features, but I have not seen anybody put a date on paper yet.